Hello guys and welcome to the Zabbix Cookbook channel once again. In our first video we did install the Zabbix Server 3.4 with a Zabbix agent, and we even configured our local host virtual machine to be monitored by the Zabbix and collect some kind of the data which is available by default after you install the Zabbix. Now in this video let's talk about Zabbix Java Gateway, which is just another component of the Zabbix, and it has just one purpose. It does monitors any kind of Java applications. For me, Java was always something that might bring a pain in terms of the configuration, but in this example we will configure Java Gateway to monitor the Tomcat again on our local installation of the Zabbix server. So somewhere on the screen you should see the link to our first video where we installed and configured this virtual machine together with a Zabbix server. Long story short, CentOS 7 something, latest release, minimal install. SL Linux is disabled, so it is in the permissive state. If you have enforcing, after you type get enforce, then just type set enforce 0. Firewall is disabled, but firewall will not be an issue for the task with the Java Gateway. So, first of all, what do we need to do? We need to install a Zabbix Java Gateway component, and to do that, I think you already should have a Zabbix repo added, so you just need to type yum install zabbix-java-gateway. And since we will be monitoring a Tomcat, let's install also the Tomcat in this step. So yum install Zabbix Java Gateway, Tomcat, and -yes to accept all the installation process. Should not take a lot of time. And after this will be completed, there are just few things that we need to do, and the order how you will do those steps actually doesn't matter. So in my case, let's start with the front end. So go back to your Zabbix frontend, which will be IP of your virtual machine /Zabbix. Then go to the configuration tab, hosts. We already have a host for the Zabbix server, but let's create a new one that will be used for our Java Gateway monitoring. So click on the create host, then we need to type a host name, and let's make it Tomcat. In the Zabbix, a host must be in at least one host groups, and host groups in the Zabbix are used just for the logical grouping of the hosts and also the permissions. So let's add it to the Linux servers. Agent interface. Remember, the Tomcat Java Gateway is installed locally on our same machine where the Zabbix server is installed, so IP stays the same, 127.0.0.1, but actually pay attention, we're talking about Zabbix Java Gateway, but this interface is for the agent, so for the Zabbix agent, which means that we need to add a new interface for the JMX, and JMX stands for Java. So just click one add button. You can delete, remove the agent interface or leave it as it is. It will not change anything. Simply we won't add any Zabbix agent items, so it will be basically unused. Okay, let's add it. And let's go also to the templates, and for the Tomcat monitoring we will use template not Apache or Tomcat, but app generic Java JMX. After you select the template, you might want to click big add button, but pay attention, you need to select the small add button and only then the big one. It's the typical mistake in all of the Zabbix versions starting from 3.0 when the new frontend was introduced, and also myself quite often forget to click small add button, and then you could just look on the screen for 5-10 minutes waiting when the green availability icon will show up, but there's just no template. So we have a host we have an interface, we have a template assigned, and this will most likely appear, the JMX availability will appear as a red, just because we don't have Zabbix Java Gateway and Tomcat properly configured for this task. So let's go back to our CLI. And we did install Tomcat, we did install Zabbix Java Gateway, so let's start the Tomcat. Systemctl start Tomcat. Done. Actually, we need to edit the config file of the Tomcat because we need to allow incoming connections from the Zabbix Java Gateway to the Tomcat to collect the metrics. And the config file of the Tomcat is located in the etc tomcat tomcat.conf. Click enter. Not the new line, so click enter. And we don't need to change anything here, we just need to add new parameters. And I have them already written in the notepad, and for this case I will add this line in the description of the video because it is quite sensitive. If you will make some mistakes, if you will add some extra dots, commas, spaces, new lines, whatever else, Java monitoring will not work. And the tricky part is that even if you would open up a documentation of the Zabbix, which has actually fully described how to install and configure Zabbix Java Gateway, if you would just copy-paste the line from the documentation, it would not work because it's kind of divided into multiple lines with a new line, and the user simply usually just select everything, copy-paste with the new line symbols, and because of that, this Java monitoring will not work. So I will just take this line and paste basically in any free spot in the config file. And what do we have here? So these are the Java opts in which we are first of all allowing the remote connections to the Tomcat. Then we are specifying the management port, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're specifying that we won't use any authentication and we won't use SSL. So the connections won't be encrypted, there won't be any authentication, clean, unencrypted, not secure, but still a connection that will work. After you added this line, just save the config file and we can restart Tomcat. Systemctl restart Tomcat. Just because we changed the config file, so it is always better to restart. Then the config file of Java Gateway. Remember from the first video, the Zabbix configuration files are stored in the etc Zabbix, and if we would type Zabbix and just press the tab, you can see we have a Zabbix agent config file, Java Gateway config file, and the server config file. So we need Zabbix Java Gateway.conf, and let's see what do we have here. So the listening port 152. Remember, for the Zabbix server it was 151, so no problem here. The location of the PID file, absolutely fine. Start pollers 5. This is the default value, and you can see the range is starting from 1 till 1000. But for this task, 5 will be absolutely enough. So these internal processes of the Zabbix Java Gateway will be responsible to actually connect to the Tomcat and poll the data. And the timeout, the parameter that is inside all of the Zabbix components, the server agent, proxy, Java Gateway, where the maximal value is 30 seconds for kind of extremely slow checks, but you should keep this value as low as possible just to otherwise you might have some other performance issues later on. So actually we don't have anything to change in this config file, but we need change config file of the Zabbix server. So etc Zabbix server.conf, not the Java Gateway. Click enter and search for Java.
Start pollers unreachable. No. Java Gateway. There we go. IP address or the host name of Zabbix Java Gateway. Only required if Java pollers are started. So the default value is nothing, just a blank. And remember that case sensitive just exactly as it is in a default. So Java Gateway equals, and we need to write IP address or a host name of the machine where the Zabbix Java Gateway is installed. And in our case, it is again localhost, so 127.0.0.1. Java Gateway port, remember in the Java Gateway config file we had a parameter listening port which was 152. Nothing to change. And another one, the last one parameter in the server config file is start Java pollers. These will be the internal processes of the server that will connect to the Java Gateway and collect the data which were previously collected by Java Gateway from the Tomcat. And we need to start them. So start Java pollers equals, and if you would follow any kind of documentation or guides online or on a forum, you would find the value 5. But why 5? Why not 1? Why not 10? And actually, remember in the Java Gateway config file, we also have 5 pollers. So you would want to keep this number of preferred processes at least the same as on the Java Gateway. If we would have 5 pollers on the Java Gateway and just 1 on the server, not in this case, but if we would collect a lot of metrics and let's say 5 pollers on the Java Gateway would be working on 100% collecting a lot of the data, then 1 poller on the Zabbix server side would simply not be able to process all the data from the Java Gateway. So that's why at least the same amount as in the Java Gateway config file. After this is done, right quit, done. And remember that all the time when you make the changes in the config files of any Zabbix component, you need to restart it, because Zabbix reads the configuration files only upon a start. So systemctl restart Zabbix-server, done, and systemctl start Zabbix Java Gateway. Now think about, remember we talked the ports, the port of the Java Gateway was 150, I forgot, cat, let's see, Zabbix Java Gateway.conf, grab, listening, no, okay, let's see, Zabbix Java Gateway.conf, listen port 152. Okay, so the listening port of the gateway is 152. For the server it is 151. But remember, when we created a host inside the front end, the Tomcat host, we have a port of the interface 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and quite frequently users make a mistake. They're like, oh wait, my listening port is 152. But no, in this place you don't need to specify the listening port of the Zabbix Java Gateway. You need to specify the listening port of the application that you will be monitoring. And in this case, for the Tomcat, remember when we edited the Tomcat config file, let's say tomcat.conf, we added the Java opts and specified the remote port 12345. So the port for the interface inside the front end must be exactly as specified here. That's about it. So we started Java Gateway, we started the server, I guess, and at this moment, yep, we already can see the availability of the Tomcat for the JMX interface green, which means that if we would go to the monitoring latest data and Tomcat, then we would already see some kind of the Java metrics collected from the Tomcat. But don't be afraid if some of these items are not supported. So we can see about the garbage collectors, some error messages, because the template that we link to this host is not actually meant to monitor exactly the Tomcat. This is more or less just a generic template with generic metrics, and some of them simply cannot be collected from the Tomcat application. So that's about it, how to configure the Tomcat, and I just want to show you one last thing about the Java Gateway, which is a little bit different than with other components. We didn't talk about it yet at all, but it is possible to increase the debug level of the Zabbix component with a runtime command. Like if we would check the log file of the server right now, we have some information, nothing big, but we can run the binary Zabbix server minus capital R, which means runtime command log underscore level underscore increase. Click enter. Command sent successfully, and now if we would check the log file again, it does produce a lot more information. We don't need to restart a server, it happens on the fly. So now we can decrease it back to the normal level. The same thing works for the agent, for the proxy, but it doesn't work for the Java Gateway. There is no runtime command for the Java Gateway how to increase the debug level, but sometimes it is indeed very helpful to troubleshoot why some kind of metrics of some kind of applications are not working. And by default, the Zabbix Java Gateway log doesn't produce any information, because if we would go to etc Zabbix, click tab, there is a file, Zabbix Java Gateway logback XML. So Java Gateway underscore logback XML, and you can find here where it is the root level info. This is the default and a current debug level, logging level for the Zabbix Java Gateway. And if you need some more information inside the log about all of the checks where you would be able why it is failing or what is happening with the Java Gateway, as an option you can set it to the debug. Right quit, systemctl restart Zabbix Java Gateway. Remember that all the config files are written by the Zabbix only upon the start of the service. So the restart, and if we would check the log file of the Java Gateway at the moment in the var log Zabbix Java Gateway.log, we would see that there is a lot more information. Not that much as on the Zabbix server, but if you would have a lot more items with less frequent update intervals, basically each check will be logged here. And you can see this line, debug, 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 would not appear with a default logging level specified in the logback XML file. So that's about it about the Java Gateway. I don't know why, but quite often installation and configuration of this service, this Zabbix component, is making some kind of the trouble and things are not working. Well, the most common mistakes are indeed that Java ops line, which again I will add in the description, and the Tomcat, some kind of the typos, mistakes, wrong parameters, then the interface of the host of the JMX is red with some kind of error message. And another frequent mistake is just a misconfiguration, or when the users forget to add parameters to the Zabbix server or the Zabbix Java Gateway config file. As example, simply you could specify the Zabbix Java Gateway location, the IP address in the Zabbix server config file, but possibly you would forget to start the Java pollers, which by default are not started at all. And in the end, you would have the host, you would have a template, You would have Java Gateway running, Tomcat, everything configured properly, but availability would just remain gray. So in that case, check your config file of the Zabbix server, verify all the config files, verify that you did restart the component after you changed the config file, and then everything should work. So that's about it for today, and the next video probably will be about the proxy installation and also a little bit overview of the proxy, when it is, how it works, what kind of the benefits we can have with the proxy, about the proxy modes, active and passive, and what you need to keep in the mind when you are installing, configuring, creating the proxies. Thank you.